thank you so much for joining us. You know, it's funny because when we do a podcast, we always like to just vibe and talk about what we're feeling and what we're doing. I had this whole thing written up, and I'm like, this is what I'm going to tell Mr. Tubbs. I watched all your TED Talks.
Oh,
I
no.
watched your documentary.
We researched.
We talked about you upsetting the setup, which was really touched me. One of my favorites actually was the political power of being a good neighbor. Love that one, where you talked about Mr. Roberts, Singleton, and the original Freedom Writers. And I was like, okay, we're going to talk about this quote. But my man literally finished that quote at the end of his speech. So I was like, dang, what am I going to talk about? But luckily, I came prepared and paid very close attention. So in 2008, you were a member of a 3-person debate team and won that debate in Cincinnati, and that was sponsored by the NAACP. And in that debate, you were advocating for health, which is perfect because this is what we're talking about, especially since we're talking about the stigma on mental health. So fast forward to today. Is there anything in that debate competition that you have applied now that you are practicing and serving in the government and plan hopefully doing so again as you are running for lieutenant governor?
Yeah, no. Well, first, thank you guys for the work you guys are doing and the campaigns you guys design. It's like, I know it's good work, but objectively, as someone who didn't make it, it's really good work and very inspiring. And also thank you because I wore this shirt in that TED Talk, so you didn't mention that. Like I have no clothes, so but also I can still fit it. That's like not bad actually. So now to your question, I think the biggest thing I learned from that debate was just the power of understanding the other side or the other argument, even if it's not sort of what you believe. I think oftentimes when we're advocating or trying to persuade, we can become myopic and tunnel vision and not actually at least have an understanding of what the other side may think so that you're able to sort of argue their points or contend with their arguments like when you're presenting yours. So for example, like for the guaranteed income experiment, a lot of the work we did before launching was thinking through, so what would be all the critiques? Like what would people say about this so that even though we disagreed, we were prepared to have an answer or are prepared to reason and reckon. So I think that's the biggest lesson. And then number 2, I was senior year in high school, I was 17 years old, and that was my first time actually studying healthcare. Like I had no idea what healthcare was. Like I just go to the doctor. So it's just fascinating to learn about the system and the bureaucracy, and also just how, as a society, we make very simple notions very complex. And in that case, it was this idea that everyone has a right to healthcare. Full stop. Mm-hmm. That everyone should be able to access a doctor preventatively and when something happens. And I remember just reading that and being like, oh my, like, we're debating this? Like, this is like a campaign issue? Like, I remember the debate about that. And I think what stuck with me is that so much of what makes politics interesting to me is this idea of taking sort of these notions that feel very simple to me, and translating them into the messiness of policy. And I think sort of the North Star then, and has always been, it's like, well, if it's good enough for me, like if I need it, I'm sure you need it, right? And that's kind of sort of how I try to think of things.
Thank you. Oh, that's amazing. That was an amazing response.
I kind of want to just emphasize something you just said right now, is we make things so much more complex than they need to be. Something as simple as human rights, which feels like it should be so simple, right? Like everybody should be able to identify how they want to identify.
Like I'm so like, no shade, but like who cares? That's what I'm like, why do we care? I don't know.
Literally. So I appreciate that you mentioned that. Why is it so difficult to wrap our head around that people deserve to have the same rights as everybody else?
But what it is, because I think about this a lot, I really think that by virtue of the society we live in, that all of us have eternalized, even a little bit, this notion of that there's such a big difference between us. Like, I might need, like, for example, for guaranteed income, when we interviewed people before we did it, everyone talked about how they could use the money, how it'd be helpful for them. And then almost everyone talked about how those other people were going to use it badly. And no money was given out yet. We're just theoretically talking. And the insight was like, wow, like we've really internalized a politic or a policy where it's like, I know what I need. I know what I deserve. I know what the people in my in-group deserve. But these other people are different, like fundamentally different from me, have different needs, have different abilities. So I would use this for food. They will use this for drugs. Or I need health care. They don't need health care. They need to figure out how to pay for it. Like, and I think part of the work we have to do and the work that all you mental health practitioners are doing is calling us back to like shared humanity. Like we could, like some things are political issues, but rights aren't. Like some things deserve compromise, but self-determination, that's not a political issue. The government should decide that. Like that's ridiculous.
Yeah. Something I live by, and it's actually my Instagram bio, is it's just a basic human right. And that's really all it is.
Yeah.
It's just a basic human right. So.
I'm really fascinated with what you said earlier and how when you're starting to work or do something from the very beginning, you don't understand what the ripple of that is going to be. So I find that amazing that you had that debate in high school.
It's crazy.
And now we're here talking about mental health and how problematic it is for us not to have the basic needs.
No, look, I respect everyone's faith tradition. I just don't like how like in my life. I think it's very clear to me that like God like orchestrates a lot because none of this makes sense, and it's always comes full circle. So whatever folks call it, like I think I'm very clear that there's clearly some all this ain't random, but there's some intention, and with that intention comes a responsibility to like do something, like to try to make things better.
So I want to go back to that quote because ever since I heard that, what are you prepared to do today so that 50 years from now a child born could have the chance to be president? This quote resonated with me because it has a lot to do with our work. We're all trying to pave the way for our youth to have a better road to be leaders. Mm-hmm. I'm sure obviously that made a huge impact for you. Can you tell us a little bit about your work and how that correlates hand in hand?
Yeah, I think it's always a reminder, like, because 50 years is a long time. So I think it's also a reminder of sort of how long it might be to see some of the impacts of things you're doing today. Mm-hmm. And how if it's about instant gratification or things changing overnight, you'll get burnt out.
Yeah. It
might take 50 years, which is a long time. But when it happens, it's like, wow, I can't believe this happened. So I think that's part of it. I think it's also a reminder of, one of my favorite movies when I was a teenager was The Butterfly Effect. Have y'all seen The Butterfly Effect with Ashton Kutcher? Mm-hmm. I was a weird kid, though, because that's like a deep movie. But anyway, I loved it. And I think I was just obsessed with, wow, these little things had all these ripple effects, and no one knew what those effects would be if that didn't happen, or if that decision wasn't made. And I think since then I've been obsessed with, like, wow, and jumping a little bit, but and thinking about sort of the last 100 days under this federal administration, I've come back to like that quote in the Freedom Riders a lot, and I think the big new takeaway, which is kind of simple actually, is that history is always made at the margins. Like if you read like the history of our country or even the history of humanity, like there's been times of existential crisis where it wasn't actually clear in the moment that we would make it. Wasn't actually clear in the moment that we would survive. Wasn't actually clear that there was going to be a new day. And that like not a whole bunch of people, but like a couple of people maladjusted to society did things on the margins, right? When you think of with like slavery. Like Harriet Tubman didn't free millions of people. In fact, she freed hundreds of people while a whole bunch more were enslaved. But those small acts beget more, help shift the tides of history. Or you think of like the civil rights movement, or the farm workers movement, or some of the Native American resistance efforts. They weren't everybody. It was a couple people standing up and saying, no, we deserve land sovereignty, or no, we deserve human rights, or no. And I think that's what that quote means to me. It's that like, no, like history is written by those who write, meaning that everyone has a pen, but not everyone's writing. But the folks we read about are the folks who took the pen and wrote. And it's not a whole bunch of people, but it's always made at the margins. But there's been countless, like the American Revolutionary War. There was no way they were supposed to win that. Like, they were going to the most powerful empire in the world with like colonies around the world. There was like this ragtag group of people that were like eating each other in the winter because there's no food. Like they had like wooden teeth. Like they weren't trained. Like, huh? They put some tea in some water. But if you because we read it now like we're America, but like them folks weren't supposed to win. There was like no way actually they're going to win. Like so many times it was like, oh my God. Even the Civil War, there was a time the Union was losing that war, but for a couple decisions. So very long answer to say. I think it's just a reminder that history is made at the margins, and actually small things do matter. But I think the hard part is you don't know. Like you don't know which small thing is actually going to matter, but we do know that in our history it's always been an act, a speech, an act of defiance that has catalyzed movements and have actually made things better.
I really find it funny how when you stated when you first started doing your work, you really did not like politics. Like you're not politics or politicians.
Still don't.
What I admire about your work is from what I've seen from the documentary, because obviously I'm not from up north, so I don't know what's going on in Stockton. All I know is like
I'm not from.
news.
No, this new stuff is not me. Everything new, I'm not there.
From back then.
Yeah. Back then I'll own, but anything past 2021, that's not. It's them folks.
But during your time, and when you sat here and you passionately said that do the work, you guys need to do the work. Witnessing you actually asking somebody that's homeless, hey, what do you need? Do you need a toothbrush? Do you need something to eat? That was extremely admirable as a politician and as someone who not only talks the talk, but walks the walk as well. So I just wanted to say that people are looking at you and watching your work.
Oh, thank you.
So, and I think that's very important for someone who's giving so much of themselves, because you stood up here and said, what are you willing to lose? I can only imagine the amount of friends probably that didn't agree with you or aligned with your beliefs, your hard work, family. I know sometimes Kamali and I will put in some hours at work and it's like, oh, I want to go home, but we love our community so much. We love our families and we love our communities, and having to divide that time between community and family that you're both serving, I think it's important for someone to tell you you're doing a good job.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yes.
Yes. I do want to ask, because I really think it is important that it can take just one person or a ripple effect, but you also talked about the systems that are placed against us, and a lot of times it can be exhausting being that person or being that system, or not being that system, but being that person that is trying to change the system. What do you do in terms of coping, or in terms of keeping yourself grounded and not getting overwhelmed, that keeps driving you?
Yeah. It's a good question. I don't know. I think I'm in a state of like delusion sometimes. Like honestly, I think I'm just or hyper focused. I think the healthiest coping mechanism is sort of being drawn back to like the why. So spending time with like my kids is helpful. Hanging out with my family is helpful. Or being reminded that even if systems work while changing the system, being reminded of like individuals who've been helped along the way is super helpful, because like it takes a long time to change a system.
Yeah.
And oftentimes that change is not just on you. You gotta be you, but you gotta get a bunch of people to agree with you.
Yeah.
So I think for me it's helpful to be like, while we're doing that work, there's still individuals we've helped. There's still individuals who've gotten to, there's individual stories that could anchor, like, okay, like this is not all for vain. So I think that's part of it. And then naps. I love me a nap.
Oh yeah.
I'll take me a nap.
Midday nap.
Oh, I'll take me a nap. Like, don't play.
That's a coping skill.
Yeah, I'm a nap.
So we've come pretty much to the end of the podcast, but just want to ask you if you have anything that you really want to leave us with. Any message that you want to leave us with?
Well, to be honest, I gave y'all my best today. I did
know,
not phone it in. I was serious. No. But I think, like, one of my favorite scriptures says, "Don't get weary in well doing, for in due season you'll reap a harvest if you faint not." And I think, like, the past couple months in particular, I've been reflecting on that and had a very simple insight that I hadn't thought of before. And the insight is that the directive wouldn't be don't get weary, unless getting weary was a rational response. Like, no one would tell you don't get tired unless they'd be like, you're about to be tired, right? Like, so I think it was a good reminder that, like, no, this work is heavy. This work, you could do it with joy, but still take something for you. But also a reminder that at the right time, there'll be a harvest, but that harvest will only come if you don't give up. And again, the hard part is, like, you don't know when it'll come, and I submit that oftentimes the harvest or the outcome comes right at the point where you're really about to quit. Like, right at the point where you're done. Like, right at the point where you don't want to do it again, or you don't, it's too much, or another thing. And that doesn't mean don't take care of yourself, and it also doesn't mean don't take breaks. But it does mean you can't quit, especially now. If you're going to quit when it was easy. Like, now is not the time to quit. Now we need all the players on the field. And just please don't get weary, because at some point, things will get better. I just can't predict when that point is. And the only thing we know for certain is that if we give up, if we quit, things won't change. That's the only certainty we have. Like, if we don't do anything, nothing changes. And we know if we do something, eventually things will change. We just don't know exactly the timeline, but that's not an excuse to give up. And the last thing I'll say is, I truly believe that the inability to do everything is not an excuse to do nothing. That between nothing and everything is plenty for all of us to do. And figure out what that is. Like, you don't have to do everything. There is no savior in here. No one person has all the answers. But everyone has an answer. Everyone has a role. And your inability not to solve for everything does not absolve you of a responsibility to do something. Because that's the only way I think things get better.
Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Michael Tubbs.